So the subtheme was already created, and we have the design from the other repository. Here. I don't know if that works. Yeah, it's here. Okay. So we have this design. For some reason, some images don't show on the projector. Okay, we want to make this look like this. One thing I sometimes do when theming is I'll open the site in an incognito tab. So you could do it. You could use a different browser, or you can click File, New Incognito tab in Chrome, and that'll open the site where I'm not logged in, basically. So then I don't need to also factor in, subtracting the administration menu mentally while working on things. So this is the true starting point. And oh, this one's not incognito, so I can't put them together. Okay, so the next thing I do is I pick a small part of the design and I focus in on it and say, how do I make this part match pretty much exactly in the other design? So in the theme, the first thing I'm looking at is the logo. And intuitively, I say intuitively because there are other ways that might even be better, but the first thing I would probably think of is, let me swap this image with my image. I inspect it to see where the image is, and it's directly in the theme. It's not even in the images folder. So I will replace the image. Okay. I'm just opening the theme folder. Okay. So here is the theme, and here's that logo file I want to replace. I'm going to take, I already had it open. I'm going to take my logo from the design, copy, paste. I'll delete the old one, which was named logo.png. Eventually. I'll rename the new one logo.png. Okay. And then refresh the site. All right, we have our transparent logo, which is why it looks like that. So that's the first thing. Okay, what's, the next thing at the very top that I want to do? It's transparent, so that bothers me. I want to know that it's looks right. So the next thing I would do is I would make the background color black. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I can look here and see how we did it. Here, we did it on the header element. And we have these other settings that are useful too. So I'll take this CSS. Most of our CSS work is going to be in the miscellaneous file. So this is the CSS I'm going to use, but I have to look at my theme and see what element will this apply to here. So we also have a header with ID of header and class of header, which is kind of weird. But I'm assuming they gave it an ID of header because maybe they're using the header element somewhere else. Technically or semantically, you can give sections of the website their own headers. So it is possible that the header element could be used somewhere else. So I'm going to target the header element with ID of header. And I just copied the CSS from our design. Okay, so we're closer. The next, again, I go compare. Find the design. Okay. So now I'm back to comparing. Next thing I notice is it's full width, and ours is not yet full width. So I can look at how that was done here. And here, the header class has a the header element has a class of content wide. Looking at it here, that class says width 100%. So that's one thing I'll try. I'll go and I'm going to copy the content wide class, the CSS. And then I'll go to my page.tpl in the templates folder, and I'm going to add another class, content-wide. So now the header class has both of those classes. And I'll see if it fixed it. So it did not fix it. Now I need to look more closely and see why will this not extend all the way. And I start highlighting the elements going higher and higher. And this is the first one that has orange, which means margin. And sometimes it means that the width is restricted. So if I click on this page element, it's a div element with ID of page, and then look at the CSS. This has margin left and right auto, which means it's centered, but it also has maximum width of 1,200. So I don't want that. I look and I see that's in responsive.css. So I'll go to responsive.css. And here's the max width that I don't want. Delete it, refresh, and now we have it full width. So I accomplished another thing. So I go back and see what's the next thing. In this design, the logo is like hugging the left wall, but in this one, it's not. It's hard to see on the projector, but basically, if you zoom out, this logo stays to the left. This one is centered. So we see how that's done. You see, we have the header, which is 100% wide and has the content wide class. But immediately inside of the header, we have a class called content narrow, and that, is restricting the width and it's centering. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to page.tpl. Here's our header class. There's no div right inside of it that contains everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and add one with the same class, which was content narrow. And spacing is very important. So first I'm adding the element, which has to be 2 spaces inside of its container. But now I need to also shift everything inside of it with 2 spaces. So I'm going to highlight everything inside of that div. I think I missed. And if I press tab in Sublime Text, it indents all of them. And then I need to copy the content narrow class from our other design over. Things that are appropriate for the responsive file are things that deal with like layout width and things like that. So if you really wanted to obey that, you probably put the content narrow and content wide inside of the responsive file. But don't, worry about that. I would get all of your CSS into the miscellaneous file. Now I refresh it, and now it's centered. Here's the full size. So we're closer, And this is just like how you progressively keep getting closer and closer. The first, harder problem that deals with not just HTML and CSS is the menu. Some of it you'll know the more you build websites, you'll see that there's a main menu and a secondary menu. And well, I guess we're learning that now. This is the home link is the main menu. My account and logout is the secondary menu. There's a lot of ways to figure that out. If you go to structure menus and you list the links from each of the menus, you would eventually see the home menu. The home link is in the main menu, and the others are on the user menu, my account and logout. So our design only has the main menu. Our target design, not this one. So we basically want this home link and all of its other main menu links when they exist to I have it here. We want them to be to the right of the logo and to have this styling. But when you're logged in, you'll see that the secondary menu is to the right of the logo. So I'm thinking now, instead of starting here and trying to figure out how to get it up there, I should move this menu to where this menu was as the starting point. So let me look inside of page.tpl and see where's the secondary menu and where is the primary or the main menu. So I have page.tpl. The way I would figure that out is usually something promising is to inspect what you're looking for and to look for the CSS classes. So I'm going to go up a few. I see this is where the menu starts. I see secondary dash menu, and I see secondary also dash menu. So let me look for that. Secondary dash menu. There it is. I'm being a little reckless, but we don't have a secondary menu in our design. I'm just going to delete it and know that if we ever decide we need it, we can just put it back from the Zen theme. So I deleted the secondary menu, and I'm going to put a note to myself. Secondary menu was here. It's not showing up, but it's in gray. This is just a note for right now, so I don't lose the spot. Then I'm going to look for main menu and find it here. And okay, let me slow down. This comment made a few people ask. Well, this comment says, this code snippet is hard to modify. We recommend you using a contributed module instead, basically. I don't want to modify this code. I want to copy the code in full and move it, which isn't the same as modifying it. If I was modifying it, I would listen to what they said. So we want to decide how much are we cutting and pasting. And you always want to start at an opening tag, and almost always you want to start at an opening tag and end at the corresponding close tag. So if main menu, that seems promising, and then end if. I don't expect you to identify it as quickly as I did, but yeah, that's where it opens and closes. That's the first if main menu, and that's the first end if. So that's one thing that we could definitely cut, and that'll give us the whole menu. If you look around a little more, you'll see we have a div containing it, div ID equals navigation, which ends right here. And that contains print render navigation. So this will render anything that you drag into the navigation area on your theme. So that's something I probably want to keep together with the navigation.
Is that navigation referring to a region?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, we talked about regions in one of the lessons, and it shows this exact code. So look back at that lesson if this part is throwing you off. So I want to keep that region together with the main menu, because if someone is using our theme and they drag something into the navigation region, they're probably going to expect it to be with the main menu. This div is optional. I could just delete it, or I could bring it. I'm going to bring it. Okay, and then I'll go up to where I left myself that dark comment. Here it is. I cut it, yeah, and now I'm pasting it where the secondary menu was. And now I'm indenting it. Okay. I think that's appropriate indentation. I'll go back here and refresh my site. And if I look for the home menu, I see that it's up here on top of the logo. If you're logged in as admin, it's even harder to see it because it's behind the admin bar, and I'm sure that would be confusing for whoever encountered that. But now we're back at having a CSS problem. We inspect it. We see why is it floating all the way up there. Eventually we'd come across the div ID equals navigation has position absolute top 0. And I guess the first relative thing is the body of the whole website. So I don't really want to deal with undoing their CSS right now. So I'm going to just delete that div. Because these are the types of changes you expect to make. I want one more div. I want one less div. I want to move things. Those are the types of changes you'll make. I don't know how to out tab. Oops, that's not it. Okay, so I'll temporarily leave it, poorly indented. I just removed that div, and now the home tag is here, up there. You can't see it too well, but we continue with the CSS from here, and we see how did our design make links look like this. And we just update the selectors to use whatever selectors the main menu has. And we use this CSS. We copy this CSS to, into those selectors. You also have, I think, the site name. It says site install. It's in black, so it's hard to see. There's a few options there. Maybe I won't do it all the way, but we have the logos here. If logo, print this whole thing, and that's a link and the image. And then we have if site name or site slogan, print all of this stuff. You have a few options. You could make the site name look decent, like just make it presentable. But it says if site name, so that means this theme probably has an option to not print the site name. So if you look at the theme settings, appearance, settings, DebugAcademy theme, there's site name and site slogan. You could uncheck those and save it. And go back, and now it's gone from there. So typically when it says if something, you either have an option, like a setting, or it's like giving you information about the current page you're on. Like is front will tell you if it's the front page. That's not a setting. So yeah, from here, most of the rest of the header is a CSS problem. And actually, I just thought of something. That secondary menu I just deleted, that could potentially be this login link. You could maybe add the login link to the secondary menu, and then you could put the secondary menu after the main menu, and use CSS to just make it go on top and in the corner. You don't have to do that. You could also add the login link to the main menu and just target the last link. That's a little harder in some ways, because you have to specifically target the last link. But yeah, this is the approach to theming. Pick something very small. I picked like 10 small things and did them one by one. But pick something small. Like, oh, I want the logo. Okay, now I want the background color. Now I don't like that it's not spaced exactly the same on the outside. Okay, now it's not spaced the same on the inside. Those are each separate things. And after doing each one of them, you could even commit your work and say, replace the logo. set the background color, set the background width, you know. The more comfortable you get, in some ways, like the less commits you'll do. Like maybe I would do a commit now that's like finish the HTML for the header, did the basic styling, and my next commit would be like navigation menu styling completed. The next one after that would be like login button added. But yeah. Yes?
Can you explain why you don't do that div?
The div ID equals navigation.
Yeah.
It was optional, like you could keep it, but that div had CSS, so it said div ID equals navigation, and it had CSS properties, which were taking the home link and positioning it here. And that CSS was inside of a media query, which told me that there's probably other CSS and other media queries. I didn't feel like looking for all of that CSS and undoing it. So I was like, why am I going to use this div ID equals navigation as a starting point if it's just going to give me more work to do?
So you just delete it.
I deleted it. The other option would be to change the ID. So div ID equals main menu or main navigation. You could keep the div if you want the div there. I just didn't like all of the baggage the div came with.
That made it, that was very helpful.
Okay, that's good.